1983, and I had to be pretty much dragged kicking and screaming into square dancing because oh, I'm not a dancer. I don't think I'm going to be doing that. But my office mate was a dancer at the club, and he observed that there were no girls hiding under any desks in our office or anything like that, and that there were some down at the Square Dance Club, at which he was a member of, and I said, well, I don't know, maybe that would be a reason. Okay, so he dragged me down there, and uh, I remember the first night. Uh, where you just did the usual beginner stuff, circle to the left and right and left through and stuff like that. And then we went back after the dance. We went back to my office, and I immediately whipped out a piece of paper and started trying to write my first sequences. And I handed it to Kent, my office mate, and I said, "Oh, I wrote this thing. It took me like an hour or something to write this, six or seven long call sequence." And I handed it to him, and I said, "Does it work?" Now he's not a caller, so it took him a long time to figure out also um, if it worked. And finally, at the end, he said, "Well, it works in the sense that you can do these calls in this order and they will work, but it doesn't resolve." And I said, "Resolve? What's that?" And he said, "Oh, you have to get them back in the same order with their partners and their corners." And I said, "Oh, that makes it a lot harder." But I'd gone the whole fun night with not noticing that happened. But very very quickly, I started sort of learning to simultaneously call and to dance, and that class goes really quickly anyway. Plus, I was surrounded by a bunch of C4 dancers who were constantly trying to teach me new calls every time I turned around. So I had a sort of a fire hose introduction to it. And of course, after the plus class was over, I learned to challenge very quickly and so on. And I was pretty much calling all along. The at the when I was in the beginner class, I would come each week with a spreadsheet I had worked out of what calls I needed to work on from what positions, and then eventually, after a couple of times of that, I just started writing sequences and handing them to the workshop caller uh, for the pre-dance out in the hallway workshop. Hey, could you just call these to me? These are the things I need to work on, and so everything sort of snowballed. The first thing that I learned for a calling technique besides writing was Don's mental image system, um, and I used that for a long time in conjunction with writing. Writing plays a big part in challenge dancing that we're going to talk about, uh, just because the complexity gets to be a little bit too hard to sight call or anything. But I will tell you that learning the mental image system and doing lots and lots of things on, I prefer to use paper diagrams rather than dolls, but working your checkers and writing your stuff out. Uh, I mean, I probably spent 20, 30 hours a week doing nothing but writing choreography for the first year. Um, it was like it was like a second full-time job practically. But that combination of things is what allowed me to one day just sight call. I was at a dance, an advanced dance. I didn't have any records or material or anything with me, of course, and the caller, big national caller, didn't show up, and here we got 15 squares on the floor, and everybody's starting to get nervous, and then people started going over to the organizer who was there and said, hey, obviously so and so's not coming. What are we going to do? And why don't we get Chris to call it? And oh, can Chris call? Oh yeah, we dance C2 to him all the time. Now the thing is that the mental image stuff doesn't really go as far as advanced. So here I am. I'm at A2. I have no written material with me. And they want to put me on stage, and can you do it? I'm like, well, compared to anybody else standing around, I guess so. So I'll say yes, okay. So I got up there and put the needle down and looked around a little bit and said, okay, well, here goes. And at that point, because of all the mental image, which is sort of like doing checkers in your mind, and but easier, and because of all the writing, I was able to perfectly well call. I knew what the calls did. I knew how to move people around. I certainly knew what all the advanced calls did. So that was no problem to just generate choreography. But I had no idea how it was supposed to resolve because I never really tried that before. And then I just looked down there and I'm like, well, heck, I know all these people. They come here the Bay Path. They come every Saturday. We all show up. I know who's married to who. I remember that's a corner over there. Okay, and so I'll just put them back together. No problem. Didn't need to work on any particular algorithm or technique or method for resolving or whatever. Just once you know what the calls do that well, resolving is just trivial. Just put them back. You know how to move them around. Just move them over there and say element left. So I did that. The first sequence I started calling, and about 4 or 5 calls into it, I thought, well, I better start trying to resolve somehow. And then I just realized this is nothing. Um, the interesting part of calling, this is I'm just really talking to the newbies here, but the interesting part of calling and site calling, if you're going to be doing a lot of that, is not the resolving. That's really not that's the thing you think is a big scary impediment or something, but that's the most trivial thing in the world, really, when you get down to it. It's moving everybody around and knowing how the calls work. That's what calling is about. All right, enough of that jazz. So we're here to sort of talk about challenge dancing. Uh, and we're not going to really have any time to really get into any of the choreography very much or anything like that, but it's really more sort of what is it? And what it is it's more calls and harder puzzles. That's really what it is. And why would you want to do it? Because you like doing harder stuff. It's for people who are bored with the choreography that they're used to. Maybe they're people who are really fast learners like me, or maybe they've been doing it for a while and they've been moving through the levels. I never recommend that anybody rush through the stuff because every level that you dance has its own flavor. Just like a fun night has a little bit of different flavor from a plus dance. When you go to advanced, you're going to find that things are different there, and you're going to maybe leave behind certain aspects that you liked at the plus dance. They have very different feels. Challenge, the reason to go on to that after advanced is if you like bored out of your mind with the advanced choreography and you want some harder puzzles and you're just really into that. It's a set of levels that are um, for those kind of people who have that kind of mind and they just want to go on. It's not anything else. It's a good thing it's there because you retain a lot of people, the kind of people who are really obsessed with the puzzle stuff. That's who it's for, and this is the way that you retain those people. And those people, in my experience, this varies. Your mileage may vary, but most of the groups that I've been associated with all these years are the challenge dancers come and they support the low-level dancers. Um, they know that that's where challenge dancers are going to come from someday, and some of those people might want to be challenge dancers, but more than that, they just enjoy going and dancing. They'll go to a plus dance and they'll think that's fun. Now, they might not go to as many of them as they used to because everybody's got limited time and you can only go to so many dances. But it's not so much a matter of once they move up, it's goodbye and you never see them again. Um, Another thing is that why people do challenge dancing is because they think it's fun. Not everybody would think it's fun, but a bunch of people do. And I mean, otherwise, why would they keep doing it? They go to workshops, they go to weekends, they go to dances, they do tape groups, they do all these things. They spend a lot of time and studying definitions quite a bit, and uh, basically it's not easy because that's the point, is that it's not really easy. And why would they invest all that time if they weren't having a lot of fun doing it? Sometimes you'll see people out on the floor, and maybe they don't look like they're having fun because they're not grinning from ear to ear, and they're certainly not whooping it up. Um, they're generally a little more subdued, unless the call is right and left grand or something, and they get excited like normal people. But and you might not see giant smiles on their faces. Well, they're concentrating really hard, but they like that. It's fun. Um, the way that people learn challenge is, well, of course, it's all about the definitions of the calls. You can't, and there's a fair amount of study. There's a lot of groups that teach challenge classes will have homework. Come back next week having read the definitions for a bunch of these calls and some idea what they are. Then we'll go over them. The um, you kind of need. I'm not. Later on in the discussion, I'm going to get Clark to comment on this point, but I think you pretty much need some kind of an experienced dance leader You may not have a challenge caller in your area. You may be just trying to learn this. You're going to get together in a basement with some other people you scare up and try to figure it out. But you're going to need somebody who has a clue what's going on there. If you just like every other level, as I illustrated in a talk about a month ago, just reading the definitions is not going to be enough for you to be able to do it. You can get a huge amount that way, but there's subtleties, and the definition says that we do this, but how does that actually flow? What are the handholds that we use? What happens? This looks like we're going to crash if we do it here, and there's of course zillions of hints about how the calls and the concepts that we'll talk about start and end, and you really need that stuff in order to be a competent dancer. So you need some help. You need some context somewhere, I think. One other thing about challenge dancing is that many of the dances are tape recorded, and at least for a long time, and I think this still goes on today, people would circulate these tapes among all these basement groups of isolated people, and even people who had a caller in their area might have a tape group, and so you dance at the tapes. That's that's a lot for some people. For many people, that's the main dancing that they get to do is their tape in the basement there with their one square friends. I'll tell you my funny tape group story. I was at a C1 tape group one time, and we were dancing along, and it was a Lee Kaufman tape, my hero Lee Kaufman, and we're dancing some sequence, and Lee is calling along on the tape, and then he says, "Chris, turn around." So here in the tape group, years later, I turned around, and it's a good thing I did, because it turned out that I had actually been at that dance, and I had squared up in the same position as I did at the tape group, and I made the same mistake as I did at the live dance that was years old by that point. So that was pretty funny. We're dancing along, and the tape, Leo, the tape recorder, says, "Chris, turn around," and I do, and it fixes it. Everybody just kind of looked at the tape recorder in awe. So there's not too many challenge high level challenge callers. There's a lot more people calling challenge now, I think, than there used to be. That's my impression. Sometimes people wonder how many, the top level is C4. How many C4 callers are there in the world? And it's hard to say, but if you want like the cream of the crop, super good guys that are booked for all the national type events and stuff, there's probably 4 to 6 of those people, something like that, and there's probably about a dozen people maybe who are credible and whatever at it, and then there's a fair number of other people who dabble at it and wouldn't get booked for those kind of things, but they do call it, maybe even regularly. Oh great, hang on, let me turn this off. Double tap to answer button, screen turned on. Where was I? Callers. I lost my train of thought. I'm just going to move on. As far as when did challenge dancing start, it's been around for a very long time. The first time that people held a convention where they said, "Gosh, national convention and stuff doesn't have enough dancing for us. We want to do our challenge thing more, and maybe we'll have a whole weekend big national convention at it." That was I'm not sure, it was either 66 or 67. So it's not like a new thing. It's almost as old as modern Western square dancing. Collar Lab for a long time didn't have anything to do with it. I remember at one point they issued an official statement that said, "Collar Lab acknowledges that C1 is the level after advanced." They didn't say what was on the list or anything like that. They just acknowledged it. That was sometime when I was learning. I think that was in the 80s. And since that time, more challenge callers have gotten involved in Collar Lab, and Um, More of the maintenance of the lists and that sort of thing has moved over to be under the umbrella of Caller Lab on the different on the challenge committee there. And I think it was uh, probably the most recent thing was the C3A list was moved under the umbrella, and the voting mechanism for that is still kind of the same, except it's done under the umbrella of the challenge committee, and that was in 1998. So that's relatively recently. The levels, of course, it includes all the calls. The first call on the C4 list is circled to the left, right? I mean, everybody has to know all the calls. So you go, plus A1, A2, and then you got levels C2 and C3, which is split up into an A and a B part. And then you have various C4 levels, uh, which we'll sort of get to how that works in a minute. And Caller Lab has something to do with levels up through 3A. People ask sometimes how many calls are there. A big myth is that C4 is all the calls, and it's definitely not. Um, C4 Dancer probably knows about 1,000 calls and probably about 100 concepts. We'll talk about concepts in a minute. Um, and that's certainly far from all the calls. If you were to pick up Burleson's or something, you would find plenty of calls that are no C4 Dancer knows. Now, as far as the calls, not everybody here dances advanced, so this won't resonate with everybody, but it's the closest I could get. I don't think there's any single individual call in anywhere in challenge that is intrinsically harder at its basic level than the call chain reaction. If you can do chain reaction from all the different positions, that gives you a feel for about how hard things get. Um, and a lot of the calls have things that are like that. Motivate's another example, but chain reaction I think is actually a little harder. So I'll say that. There's a lot of really easy calls. Here's a challenge call that everybody here has been called through it. Just like when you're at mainstream and you say boys on the end, boys circulate, girls trade, and everybody who dances plus goes, yeah, AC doocy, right? Um, you can always call, well, not always, but you can often call combinations of things like that. Here's one that you've heard. You've heard boy walk, girl dodge, everybody hinge. You've heard that combination. That's a nice, very flowing thing from a lot of formations. Boy walk, girl dodge. You got mini wave, everybody hinge. That's a call. Bow hop of course, it's not boys and girls, it's bows and bells position. Because challenge, of course, is all position dancing and it's dance by definition and so on. Here's another really easy call that's on, I forget, C2 or C3, and that's couple up. What that means is that you have a box of four, a group of four people, and they can circulate. And so so it's typically, let's say it's couples facing. All it means is pass through, and the leads do a U-turn back. That's it. You could do it from a split circulate, and some of the people would turn around and not all of them. But I mean, that's an example of a pretty trivial call. The main thing that you do to get the choreographic complexity that the people at Challenge want is you use what are called concepts. Actually, before I talk about that, all the material is supposed to be very well defined. It's not supposed to be fudgy. We don't alter the definitions to fit the circumstance that we want. We go by the definition. We're trying not to call anything weird. We're trying not to call stupid things that are hard, but they're just stupid. That's not very, I mean, who likes that, right? Um, the and I had a thing I was going to say about it's not about tricking them, but I decided I couldn't decide what that meant. Because sometimes somebody will call something and people will say, "Oh, that was tricky, that was clever," but it's about presenting a puzzle that can be solved. The dancers at Challenge want to succeed at least as much as the dancers at Plus. Um, they're much more They expect that they might not get everything. At a plus dance, if the square breaks down, if I'm calling a plus dance, I call a lot of beginners and plus and low level stuff. I love doing that. I love teaching beginners. And if I'm calling a plus dance and squares are going down, that's a disaster, right? I try to never let that happen. And at challenge, on the other hand, if I'm calling a challenge dance and a square or two goes down, well, that's the way it goes. And maybe we'll do a redo or a partial redo of the sequence, and maybe we'll walk the thing through in the break to see what broke them down. But if they break down, they don't love breaking down, but they're not shocked about it. That's sometimes stuff is going to be so hard that in between this person was a little late and this guy forgot and maybe somebody didn't hear me or maybe it was just too hard for that floor. Sometimes things will go down, and people are much more accepting of that. That's a little bit of difference. Um, the if you're calling a challenge, uh, you're still trying to do all the same things that you're doing at every other level with your flow and your timing. Those things can get sacrificed a little bit. People, if you have something that is genuinely interesting, puzzle-wise, but it doesn't flow so well, uh, people will let you get away with that. And as far as the timing, um, if you have a really strong floor, you can just keep it going mostly just like at any other level. On the other hand, uh, depending on the floor and the difficulty level of what you're calling, you may need to give them a little more time. So you might introduce a little stop and go just to make sure they can, say, recognize a formation that you're trying to get them to see. Or sometimes you want to give them some extra hints before they start, blah, 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 the girls you're going to be using a right hand, that kind of thing. Um, the other thing is that sometimes it'll appear that it's stop and go when from the outside if you're watching, but the dancers really are not perceiving it as stop and go because their minds are still running, they're still engaged, and mentally they don't really, in a sense, realize that they're stopped. So you'll see some of that. Now the other thing is sometimes the calls, if you want to shoot out some really complicated thing, the call can take longer to say than the amount of time, between the end of the previous call. Even if you start saying the name of the call pretty well ahead of time at a point where it's reasonable, the dancers are working their way through some call. It's like every level. You can't say it too early. You can't stack the call too early, but you can give it a little ahead. But sometimes you'll be saying something complicated enough that they're not. You're going to still be talking while they're stopped, waiting for you to finish the actual call, and give it to them. So you'll see that kind of thing too. Um, the if you were to, we're going to illustrate this with a YouTube at the end of this thing. I'm going to give you a URL, a couple of fun things to watch on YouTube, and I really want you to watch them because they're pretty cool. But if you were to turn the sound off and watch a YouTube with no sound of somebody doing some high-level challenge stuff versus somebody doing, say, mainstream, you wouldn't you might not really be able to tell which is which. Um, uh, Maybe you could, if you were to take somebody who didn't really know what was going on here and show them a tape of some C4 dancers and a tape of some um, beginner level dancers and have them watch them and ask them which of these do you think is the beginners, they might get it reversed, right? Because they're going to see the higher level guys maybe breaking down sometimes and hesitating and stuff like that. But by and large, and there's no new moves under the sun. There's only so many different ways you can turn somebody by the arm or whatever. So in terms of dance action, there's very little that's different about that. Although I'll tell you of a cool concept later, which actually Clark invented. It's one of some people's favorites. Some of the things that are less important for challenge callers. I mean, this is always debatable, but I'll just tell you what the reality of what people get away with. Ideally, your caller is going to have some element of showmanship and enthusiasm and those kind of things, but the way that translates into challenge dancing is different than it does in say plus dancing. Um, nobody is no challenge callers really are getting up there and hooting and hollering and whooping it up and making a lot of jokes and that kind of thing. That's the challenge dancers. They just don't care about that, and the callers, um, they really don't care about that either. In fact, sometimes the dancers actively dislike that. Another thing that's less important um, is singing. Most challenge does not involve singing calls. Um, when I do a challenge dance, I'll do a singing call at the end of the night. It's a little bit of a novelty and a nice go home thing. Same thing. A lot of weekends that I used to go to, there would be a singing call at the end of the weekend on the the closing session of Sunday, a singing call, just to send you home. And usually those are not hard. These are just fun. Hey, let's do a singing call. The there's at least one guy, and I wish there were more that makes or when he was active anyway, made a hobby of creating singing calls. He did them on tapes. He taped them in his bathroom, which had interesting acoustics. Um, and he would do hard singing calls for challenge, and so there is that genre of people who do hard singing calls. Um, what people are looking for at challenge callers are looking for precision. You don't want to have to guess what the guy means. He might be saying something hard that you have to really puzzle out, but you don't want any imprecision where you have to go, did he mean this or that? And in addition to just getting the words technically correct, there can be a lot of business with how you delay between your words. Um, where I heard of somebody the other day who was actually saying that when he calls, sometimes he actually says the word comma to indicate where the punctuation goes. I don't think I'd ever do that, but that's an issue in delivery, and they're looking for precision and creativity. They want to see things that they've never seen before. Um, they're going to want to see some things they have seen before. You can't every single call in the sequence can't be something they never saw before, or that would be too hard. Um, they're looking for the caller to be literate. They have to sort of know what the idioms are. Um, what are the things that are done? What are the things that are not done? No, we don't really call that. That's not right. And and they want the caller to understand the definitions in a way that it goes beyond what the words on the definition means. So when you look at a call like let's say recycle, we can all here think of several ways to define a recycle. Um, and But we know what it is. We know where it goes. We know what that call is about, and that's true for a lot of calls. Now, when you start slicing and dicing and doing weird things to the calls, you can you can get some very interesting effects. But sometimes you can do things that are just no, they're just not buying it. That just doesn't seem like that should be that call. You've violated the gestalt of the call. So the caller has to be sort of literate in those kind of things too. Dancers are looking for something that is new, that they've never seen before, and they're also looking for things that are elegant, either because they're technically elegant in the puzzle sense, or they wind up with a very interesting result. The dancers wind up on the floor arranged in some interesting way, and they didn't maybe expect to get there. Um, and also just things that flow nicely, and just like at every other level, things that fit together in a nice way in terms of flow and stuff. They're looking for that too. Now, as far as let's get into a little bit about what kind of puzzles they're into. Of course, you might think, well, let's see, what do I think of that's hard? I'm a plus dancer or something, and what's hard? Well, okay, left-handed calls might be hard, and surely you do left-handed things at challenge, but you don't really do any, maybe a little bit more left-handed stuff, but it doesn't really feel like it to me. It's not a big deal, just sitting there calling left, 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 left. That would be a novelty tip, just like at any level. Um, of course, the dancers are all position and they have to know the definitions. Um, there's an example of a dance by definition call that you might know if you know the call coordinate. You normally do that from a column. You can also do it from some other weird places, um, and wind up with the call ending in diamonds. And I bet that a lot of you have seen that at some festival. That sort of made the rounds over the years as that weird coordinate. And that's something of some amount of that stuff goes on. One thing we like to do with the calls is we like to mess with them, and so you can modify parts of calls. A lot of calls have a star turn in them, right? Spin chain the gears, but turn the star 1/4, say, right? Change things around like that. Um, and of course, you can compose things, square through, but on third hand, something else. You can do those kind of things. Um, the big thing that we play with are concepts, and you know some of those. Those are things that modify calls by various different ways. One way is to sort of add something onto it, and so you could consider sweep a quarter to be a concept. Roll, of course, is another one. Uh, everybody does partner trade and roll, but the call originally roll came from right and left roll. That was and it was right and left through and roll. Um, and then the person who wrote that looked at it and said, "Oh, the roll part was kind of interesting. Maybe we could just roll anything." Um, and you can. And roll, of course, changes the formation. Roll is the super powerful call at any level, and it just changes your formation instantly and causes the dancers to refocus on, oh, I'm now in a different formation. And that's a lot. Challenge dancing is a lot about shifting attention between different formations and different subsets of people within the square and looking around and seeing things. Um, so another thing that we do a lot is we mess around with the parts of calls. The dancers are expected to know what the parts are. Many calls have well-defined parts. This call has 3 parts. Recycle has 3 parts. Um, and you can go to a challenge floor and you can say, do 2/3 of a recycle, and they should know what that is. Now, 2/3 recycle is actually listed on the C1, the introductory challenge list, as a call. Um, and that's sort of getting them into the idea of doing parts of calls. Um, Later on, you don't have to. The calls are not spelled out as separate calls like that. It's just do 3/4 of a whatever, um, and they just have to figure that out. We'll talk about that again in a minute, I guess. Another fun way to mess around with the parts of a call in terms of the definition is to have somebody do the call backwards. In other words, on a right and left through, you do a right pull by, you do a courtesy turn. Well, you could say from a certain formation, like lines facing out, you could say reverse right and left through, and they're going to do a courtesy turn and then a right pull by, and they would have to figure that out. Or you could say do a mirror right and left through, and that would be a left pull by and then a courtesy turn in the other direction with the other person turning. Or you could say um, uh, do a mystic right and left through, and you could have some of the people doing it in the reverse in the mirror lefty type fashion, and some of them not, right? So you can throw those kind of things in there. Um, we play a lot around with fractions. Everybody has probably seen do si do 1.5. That's not something that get called as a challenge. I mean, they would do it, but that doesn't really come up because they don't really call do si do. They don't call do si do any more than you do. Less, actually. Um, the swing through is a good example of a call. Swing through, you can go swing through 1.5. So right hand turn half, and then in the middle, and then another turn, right? 1.5 more. Um, and you can do that with a lot of calls. Uh, Circulate is a call that you can do that with quite a bit. I don't know how much you're playing around with that, but if you had let's say you had lines back to back and you said only the ends do a 1/2 of a circulate, uh, the ends would go halfway across there on that little arc and they would meet and they would crash and they would take right hands, and that's all. No big deal, but half circulates and things like that happen quite a bit. You know the call zoom. You could do one half of a zoom, so you only take a little step forward, and the other person only goes uh, part way back, and then you're connected, right? You can have load the boat. Of course, has a bunch of parts, and if you load the boat, say one half, then you get a very interesting formation with some people that are in mini waves and some other people that are not. Uh, you could say you could take things apart, right? Only the ends load the boat. These are examples of things we do at Plus all the time, but these are the kind of techniques that get used with all these challenge calls. And as I mentioned, there's like a lot more calls. Um, you can have just some, load the boat. Only the ends go 3/4. So the ends would be back to back, or yeah, back to back because they haven't faced in yet. Um, you can do replacements of calls. I'm trying to pick calls that you know. Um, you could say load the boat, but on part three, centers only do half of it. Or another way to say the same thing would be load the boat, but in the centers, instead of doing your partner trade there, do a hinge. And of course, they can still do a pass through after that, but now they're going to be 90 degrees off from the ends who are just doing the call normally. So the ends are going to be facing in there on the end of the end of the eight chain, and the centers are going to be. You wind up in the same formation as if you had a squared set and you said heads come in the middle and the heads pass through in the middle. You're going to end up with things like that. And
Chris,
yes,
Chris,
sir.
can I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
I just want to remind you that we want to leave a little bit of time for some discussion. So,
Yep. Well, let me just blast through a few things here.
yep.
There's a zillion things there's a zillion concepts. Some of them change the way that you do a call. They'll introduce more things, like they'll introduce turns or even pieces of calls. There's names of things like twisted, and any tagging is a concept that we play with that adds that says do this call until you get to waves basically, and then add some stuff. Um, you know, everybody here probably knows the as couples concept, right? As couples circulate, as couples whatever, as couples walk and dodge, as couples right and left through. And you can do tandem. That's you got people that are one in front of the other instead of side by side. Um, you can say things like Siamese, which is some people are front to back and some people are side by side. You figure out which you are and then do the call that way. Do it in tandem or do it as couples. You can do things like that. Um, the um, a fun call that Clark invented, a fun concept, is that you have people arranged in that fashion. Some are front to back, leader trailer. Some are side by side, and you have them do a call. Could be any call, swing through, or maybe some more complicated call. But you have them do it so that they turn as if they're ice skating partners. So you never leave your partner and you never change your orientation. So the guy that's at the top stays at the top. And if you were to do a partner trade, everybody would be flipping over in tandem or as couples flipping over. But the tandem people, when they come over, that top guy is going to sort of rotate in place in a sense as he moves across. He's still going to be on the top. They didn't come over as a unit glued to each other front to back. They came over as a whole unit, but the one guy kind of pivoted in place. And the same thing on the as couples. It's kind of like they're doing a slidey over tag the line kind of thing for their move. And it's a very fun and I think very pretty concept that we mess around with people in different formations a lot. Um, if you've got diamonds, right, then you can find some three-person things in there that are triangles, and you can find a bunch of them, and we'll tell them to work in triangles. There's other shapes you can get where people are offset, and the waves and lines are not lined up neatly with each other, but only some of the people are lined up on the floor, and we call in those offsets and parallelograms and things like that. Um, Sometimes we have a lot of times we have people hallucinate within the square a bunch of people that they're going to work with, right? So normally, if you're going to do a pass through, you do it with well, let's say a right and left through is more interesting. You're going to do that with the people that you're facing. But supposing you had lines facing, and I could say trapezoid right and left through. This would be pretty hard. Um, what the trapezoid is, let's pick one of the trapezoids, and they're symmetric. So on the bottom row of people, they're the close people to you, the center two people. And on the top row, the people far away from you, the end two people. Those are the four people that we're saying work together when we say trapezoid. And they could be, and it could be lines or columns or waves or anything, but that shape. And of course, the corresponding other people in your square in the other trapezoid. And so we'll have you work in that distorted kind of formation. You have to figure out who you're doing it with and how to get there. Um, there's a lot of those. There's things where you have the ends work with the ends way around the outside, and the centers work in the middle with each other. So a concentric square through three, if you had lines facing, the ends would pull by, and they'd be way on the outside, pulling by for two, and then coming around the end and pull by on three. The centers are just doing a regular square through three in the middle with each other. So there's a lot of things like that. We do a lot of business with do your part, like let's say you have an 8 chain through. People in the middle do a pass through, while the other people coming into the middle do a pass the ocean. Right? We'll do a lot of that kind of thing. And there's terminology for all that. I won't go into it. One of the big things, of course, is phantoms. Everybody's heard of phantoms, and especially with the Zoom dancing, everybody's doing phantoms. The way that phantoms work at challenge is that they're not just there. The caller has to invoke them, and he has to tell you where they are, because there could be phantoms in a lot of different places. I'll show you a quick slide in a minute. I have like 2 slides just to show you something. And so he has to say where they are, and then you'll work with those imaginary dancers out there. And not only that, but you take all the stuff that I've told you, and you can layer it and layer it and layer it. So you could say, split phantom lines trapezoid. Let's say split phantom trapezoid stable. That means you're going to take, you have your 2x4 in the middle, which may or may not have real people in it, and then on either side you have phantoms in front of you. So let's say from a lines facing, you said pass through, and now I said split phantom lines. I'm talking about the phantoms that are right in front of everybody that they're currently facing. Those are those. Now people might not be already in the line. Some of them might be out there in those occupying spots with the phantoms out there, or they might all be together, and we're going to go out and work with phantoms. But in any event, you got to keep track of where those guys are. And now I said trapezoid, so that means, remember I was talking about that trapezoid thing. Now you got to hallucinate the trapezoid formation, which has in the case we just said, it's got some real people and it's got some fake people, some phantoms, and that's who you're working with there. Oh, and I added on stable. Stable's a kind of a goofy concept that says when you do the call, don't change your facing direction. Normally you might turn. Yeah, don't turn. Stay facing the same direction you are when you started the call. Do the call that way. That's how it's going to end. So there I've layered 3 things on, and that's actually, and the example I gave you there is actually an easy example. You can make it much more challenging than that if you want to. Again, difficulty level, floor control. Yeah, they're C4 dancers, but they're not real strong C4 dancers. They know most of the calls that are on the list like they're supposed to, but don't go layering all kinds of stuff on them. They won't handle it. And so the same kind of judgment and complexity rules that apply at plus and mainstream. It's the same up there. You really have to be very cognizant of exactly how you're torturing them, but they want to be tortured. So that's all the ranting I had. Let me see if I can just pull up a quick slide here just to give you at least one picture of something. Let's see here. Let's see, share the screen. And where's the thing? Oh, here it is, something. All right. Let's see. Oh, this is this is in reference to the what's on the C4 list. Here's somebody's unified. This is sort of the unified list of C4 calls that everybody agrees on. The other calls just have regular lists. This one you can see is a sort of a bunch of different lists the person has put together a master list containing the calls from all these things, right? Here's somebody who's broken it up C4A through D. We got all those guys' calls. Somebody has collected the title of C3X used to be calls used below C4, not on any list. Then we have, these are calls that are the list supposed to be what you're going to call, what you're supposed to call, or is it just letting you know what we plan to be calling? Well, kind of both. You have to be fair. They have to know what they're going to be up for, and so this incorporates those kind of lists. Let me just flip over here. Oops. Whoops. Did I stop sharing? I got some kind of error message. Hang on, what is it saying?
Yeah, I do not see you shared right now.
Oh, I got to share a different window, I guess. Okay. Is that how that works? Okay. Where's the window? Oh, I see. I have to tell it I'm okay with that, and then go on to this. What do we have here? Oh, this is a solid concept. This is a way of clumping people up. So here's a and it involves a kind of a combination problem, right? They have to find a triangle. Here's a triangle, and see, here's a triangle, and here's a triangle, and if I wanted to stretch it across, here's another triangle, or maybe even these triangles with this guy way out here and the people way over here. These are all triangles. So I'm saying inside triangle. That's these guys here. And they're going to work as a unit. They're going to stick together like they're one person, like it's an as couples thing, only it's a triangle. And what are they doing? They're doing some call where the centers are going to like cross run, so these guys are going to come over here. So that's an example of a concept. Let's see if we can get this to do this. Okay, here's that trapezoid thing. If you didn't have a good picture in your head, here's what that trapezoid thing looks like. I'm getting all these pictures. This is off of Vic Cedar's amazing website, which I recommend everybody go visit because you'll find all kinds of marvelous things there. Here's that call couple up, which was each person's going to circulate and then do a U-turn back. But you're going to do it in your trapezoid. So you see you have to find these people, not the ones right in front of you. These are you're going to circulate over to here, or where, whichever way you're pointed. I think from here, what are we doing? We're starting in a column, not a wave, but so you can see how that goes. Then what do we have here? This is probably the phantom page or something. Oh no, so the phantoms are all over the place. Where are they? The guy's got to tell you who to work with. In this case, we're saying that there's 3 groups of people, and some of them are going to be phantoms because there's only 8 real people, so some of these people somewhere in here must be phantom spots that you got to keep track of. They're not always just on outside of you. Sometimes they're in the middle. But here's the 3 groups, and so in your triple boxes, do some call. Do a right and left through. These guys do a right and left through. These guys do a right and left through. These guys do a right and left through, or depending on how they're facing. Here's another example of phantoms. What's this one here? Oh, split phantoms. This is what I think of as the most common phantom formation. And imagine if you started out with just real people, they might all be in the middle here, and so they're going to be working with phantoms outboard of them. But eventually, you could have the people spread around all over the place, occupying any of these spots, and and it's split. The word split means very much like it does in every other part of square dancing. We're splitting the square down the middle, and the phantoms over here play with each other, and the real people over here play with each other, and the same thing on this side, and nary the twain shall cross. I think that's basically it. Okay, well, I'm done yakking my head off, and so I guess we'll open it up to questions I can't answer and general discussion.
Let me start off by saying thank you, Chris. The purpose of this talk was to let people who are unaware, somewhat challenge in some mainstream and plus groups has a bad reputation. They're stealing our dancers. And as Chris mentioned in the beginning, it's not for everybody, but some people just get a little bit bored. You're that type of person. You get bored with regular dancing, and I would rather have you go on to challenge dancing for the additional puzzle rather than going to bridge or bowling. Not that I have anything against them, but if you go into bowling, you're going to bring your friends into bowling, and we'd rather have you go to challenge and bring your friends into square dancing.
Before I forget, I think Dan copied those URLs for me.
He did.
Yes,
I
if
did,
you
and I
could,
pasted them in, and I will paste them in again.
yeah, these are. I really encourage you to watch these videos. They're a lot of fun. One of them is a tip being called by a top-notch C4 caller at a C4 weekend. So it's a very strong floor there, and he's calling a tip in which each sequence is at a different level. Some of them are mainstream, some of them are C4. They're in a all mixed up order, and he doesn't announce or anything which one it is. But you can look at that and get a feel, and maybe you can try to guess what level they're at or something. I think it probably says in the comments what the actual order is. But don't look at that first. Watch the video first, and you'll see some fun dancing, and you'll see how similar the things are to each other. The second, I think it's the second URL, is a much longer video, but it's also very fun, and that's I don't know if it's the same year or not, but it's the same challenge weekend. Um, it's a high level invitation only weekend. They have some of those. There's some groups meet regularly. Some people have the tape groups. Uh, some people have open dances. Sometimes there's a C4 hall at a convention or something also, and then there are also invitation. Uh, we're just trying to invite who we think are the best dancers that are our friends or something. And that's what this weekend is. But you get some really hot shot dancers at it, of course. And it's got you can watch some of the dancing and you can see how that goes to a couple of different callers. One of whom is Clark, and you can and it's also got a bunch of interviews in that video where they're talking to the dancers about why they like it and what's fun and that sort of thing. And that's probably the most interesting thing about it, other than uh, just what does this stuff look like anyway when they're doing it. So those are a couple of YouTubes that I would love for you to watch.
The watching that first one, Chris, I can't remember. I'm sure I've seen it way back when, but if people are going to watch it, I would recommend watching it twice. The first time with your sound turned off, so you can't tell. I recognize that plus call, but that must be a challenge call because I don't recognize the words. But just watch the action with the sound off, and then go back and listen to the sound and follow it through whatever levels you want. But anyway, usually I interrupt it around when the big hand is on the top, when the hour is up. It's about 4 minutes before that, but I'm going to make this official at this point that if you have other things to do and need to go away, don't feel guilty about leaving us. But I'm sure we will continue on with a bit more discussion. This week, we took a peek at what's available, learning more things than, well, an activity that's very closely related to the Mainstream Plus and A1 stuff that many of you do, but is not fully understood because that's challenge. Those are people that like to memorize a lot. Next week, we're going to look at something in the other direction, something I discovered many years ago, that there's an activity very, very parallel to ours. And we've all, I'm sure, heard of contra dancing, but when you think of contra dancing, you don't know much about it. You're just thinking of the formations and the very limited choreography with it. But there are a lot of people, and probably currently more than do Western, that do contra dances and traditional square dances where the emphasis is not on not the same as it is with what we do. There's more emphasis on the live music than there is on the caller. There's more emphasis on energy than just moving through. There's more emphasis on not having to learn as much, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, we'll have somebody talk about that next week. When I first was introduced to it, and for many years loved dancing with the Contra traditional community, my favorite caller was Tony Parks, and he will be presenting next week for us. And then we're going to be taking 2 weeks off for the Christmas and New Year's weekends. And we've got some stuff planned for afterwards, but not exact dates yet. Anyway, thank you, Dan, for doing the engineering. And it's more than just turning on the recording and such today. There was a lot of notes about noise back and forth and posting Chris's.
And I missed some of those, but
anyway, it's nice to see some people we haven't seen here before. Really nice to see the people we see regularly. And thank you, Chris, for putting a lot of time and effort into hopefully making us aware of this part of the activity.
Well, you know, I can't believe I talked for that long, and we really just kind of scratched the surface with just sort of a quick overview of what goes on. But it was I certainly appreciate the opportunity to share it with people and see if anybody has any interesting questions or if they're all just dumbfounded or what was that?
Yeah.
And also we have with us here for our discussion, is Clark still on?
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm still here.
Clark Baker is one of the top challenge callers in the world, and is much more knowledgeable about it than I am, actually. He's one of the people who's taught me many things over the years, starting way back at that beginner class. And so you know, if I can't answer the question, I'm gonna just point to him.
I also, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, so we're opening to discussion, whatever you guys want to talk about. But John Clark, this is directed to you. John mentioned earlier that one interesting thing we might do was talk one time about hexagon dancing. And he suggested a gentleman in Southern California that does an awful lot of it. You might want to have your 2 cents worth in that since you had something to do with it originally, but just thought I'd make you aware of that. With that, so there are two main subjects of questions. One is asking Chris about different concepts or what he's talking about or why. And two is asking me, why the heck did you bring Chris on and talk about challenge? We don't want people to go into challenge. Whatever questions you want to go ahead, fire away.
I see Mel's hand up.
I don't see Mel. He must be, oh, no, there was.
Go for it, Mel.
Chris, I want to say thank you very much. I don't call challenge. I only call up to A1, and that was just a choice of mine. I wouldn't have even gone there, except I wasn't getting bookings at conventions if I didn't call advanced. What I really liked about your presentation was the fact that you went through what is the same. And I typed some notes as you were talking, just summarizing what was going on there. But the idea of it is just dancing. There's a lot more thought. The fact that their heads are down and they're thinking and they've got scowls and frowns on their faces is just the thinking process. It's not a takeaway from the fun process. I really appreciate it because it put a lot of the challenge myth, I suppose, into perspective of it's not really different. It's still square dancing. It's still the same square dancing, and you still want exactly the same thing at a challenge level that you want at a new dancer level, at a basic and a mainstream. Smooth dancing, elegant use of choreography, a little bit of variety, a good switch between the known and the unknown, and creativity from the caller, which extends to all levels. So I want to say thank you very much for that. I don't have a question about it. I just wanted to express that I really didn't look at challenge that way. I was one of those biased people towards challenge. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And yeah, it's whatever level it is, you know, it's always about entertaining the dancers. It's just the challenge people are looking for a, you know, just a much harder look at the puzzle stuff.
One of the things that's a beauty about square dancing in general is there's a place for people that want to do real tough puzzle solving. There's a place for, dancing once a month or weekly, which some people call puzzle solving set to music, being at whatever level. There's a place for people that like to go to a party night twice a year. Square dancing offers a lot of different things that are all related, and that's one of the beauties, and we're sort of exploring the different aspects of it today. I saw another hand up. Oh, Scott. My lip. You want to unmute, Aaron?
Fine. I do call through C2 only because I enjoy the level. I enjoy dancing it and I enjoy calling it. A lot of times what I do though in my plus groups is I'll bring a challenge concept down to the plus groups and show them that there's something different out there that you can do. For example, every once in a while I'll bring in the crazy concept. And I'll work with that for a while, and I'll joke and I'll say everybody do a half Scott this, So
The crazy concept, they probably don't know what that is, but it's a way of repeating the calls. There's some other concepts that are basically about repeating a call or repeating parts of it in different ways, and crazy is. Let's say you had lines facing and we're going to do a crazy right and left through. What you're going to have is you're going to have everybody do a right and left through, and then the center four people, whoever they are going to do a right and left through with each other, and back and forth. So 4 times, alternating that way. So half crazy right and left through would be everybody do it, and then just the centers do it. A full crazy would be, and then everybody do it, and the centers do it. Just occasionally you can take something like that and bring it down. That one is sort of in the novelty category. I mean, we use crazy all the time, but overall, it's if you bring it down into a lower level, it can be sort of a novelty, and that's some variety that's not very challenging overall. And that people can have fun with. And so, yeah, there's stuff like that.
As I understand it, many plus dancers think that challenge dancing is a crazy concept, but Ed, you had your hand up, and then Clark, then Brian, rather.
As a challenge dancer, I can add some things. I know that challenge dancers want more diversity. They don't want the rote calling. And they need to keep their head engaged. A lot of times, if they're dancing at plus and mainstream, they don't have to concentrate on the calls. So it's more a concentration effort. But they like to be engaged, and it's also the higher you go, the more each dancer needs to be knowing their position. And that's another thing that adds to that complexity.
Yeah, a huge amount of challenge dancing. If I were to pick out one thing and say that's the maybe the most important thing in challenge dancing, or it's got a lot of moving parts. But if I just had to pick one to focus on, I would say that it's the whole business of shifting the dancer's attention between all the different formations and arrangements that they could possibly be in at that moment. If you had regular diamonds, right? You can have mainstream dancers, they don't know it's a diamond, but you could have plus dancers and say, hey, look, there's a diamond. And you could have challenge dancers and say, look, here's a triangle here, here's another triangle over here, right? And challenge dancing is very much about one of the things that really engages people's brains and makes them work, and that is fun, is the shifting of back and forth and all around the place of the different formations that they might be able to see and find.
Last week we discussed a little bit about hard versus easy. And I think one of the things I pointed out that I feel makes a big difference is for formation awareness, knowing whether you're working in this wave or this box across the square or what have you. And I've seen challenge dances where you'll have an extra guy or gal, and they'll be in the back of the hall dancing by themselves with 7 other phantoms, or with 15 other phantoms if the caller is calling phantom stuff, but aware of where all the other people are in the formation and just keeping track of it. It's great if you want to be challenged that way.
That's actually how I used to. That's actually how I used to practice challenge dancing when I was still learning it. Is I'd go in the back of the hall by myself and have a whole phantom square, and do that. And occasionally I could look over at the real people and see if I was in the right place or not. But then, see, I wasn't inflicting myself on those people that actually knew what they were doing. I didn't want to get in their square and be, turkey it all up.
Next week, we'll talk about the sociability where you're not dancing by yourself, but with other people. Brian Clark, and then Clark Baker. BC and then CB.
There we go. So my favorite crazy thing that I thought of a while ago, which just made me giggle the first time I saw it, was from beginning double pass through, called reverse 3/4 crazy zoom. It's basically a double pass through, but it's kind of fun. Enjoy.
There's one group that I had that I could get them through a single Ferris cast 3/4 much more easily than I could get them through a follow your neighbor, which was the same thing. So Clark.
So Chris mentioned early on tape group, and I wrote a little note in the chat saying that that's kind of jargon and everyone may not know what that is, but it's just usually a square only of dancers getting together and dancing an audio tape of a previously recorded dance. And in the old days, there were only like 5 or 6 challenge callers, and they each had 2 or 3 different groups at different levels and would put out tapes which were circulated and later sold and circulated all over the country and world. So most people either didn't get enough dancing and would have a tape group that met once a week, or they'd use it as a learning mechanism. And there's an interesting thing that happens with dancing to tapes of dances versus the live dances. And this kind of, I think, applies to all callers at all the dance programs. And it's not something you would know unless you've experienced this, which is most callers are getting their timing off the group that they're watching, squares, or capability of that whole group. And if you got up and called and taped yourself calling a plus dance to your usual plus dancers that have some ability, and then had that tape go other places and had squares of plus dances try to dance that, some of them would find it too easy and the timing maybe not to be great, and others would find it too hard and would break down all the time. So my point is, you don't realize as a caller that you're interacting with your group of dancers at a very fine-grained level to adjust the timing and the degree of difficulty you're delivering to them to make sure they're having an enjoyable experience. And if you dance a tape of that dance, that can come across either too easy or too hard to another group. That's my point.
Oh, just to throw in something else about tape groups, with so much of the material being dances being taped and circulated, as far as challenge calling goes, that's another little constraint that you have. You got to come up with all this really clever stuff, and it's almost invariably written, because if it was easy enough to sight call, then it probably wasn't hard enough for them to dance. I mean, there's variability in that, but a lot of it, and pretty much all of the high level stuff is all written out, pre-written, and because no caller's gonna make that up on the fly, and moreover, if the dances, a lot of dances are taped, and those tapes are going to go places. And so what that means is when you write this incredibly clever sequence, and now you've written 3 hours worth of that stuff. That's use it once material, because you're not going to be able to, even if you travel across the country, you can't reuse that material because you're going to go in there and they're going to be like, oh, we've already seen all these things. If they were worth writing down, then they were probably memorable, and if they were memorable, they've probably already seen it because they've done the tape. So you got to be, so there's a lot of investment in writing new material when dance comes up.
I saw Ed's hand go up. Ed, you're muted.
I was just waving to Scott. Sorry.
One of the drawbacks to tapes are if you make a mistake on the tape, then someone will say, you'll hear someone say, "Oh, it didn't work on the tape either."
Well,
one of the things about tape group. Whoa, am I muted? No. One of the things about tape groups is that people do a lot of learning. If they do have a problem, they'll just stop and run the tape and run through the sequence again, call by call, and learn and add to their knowledge by, oh, that's what he meant by that, and maybe be able to dance it the other way. I have a question for any of you that want to take it, but are there any callers that create tapes without having real dancers, just to send tapes out? And if so, how successful?
I know for one that I mentioned in passing was the guy that creates the singing calls.
Right.
Stan Winchester. He records those just in his bathroom.
Stan Winchester is a different case. He's amazing. If you haven't listened to his stuff, even if you don't know Challenge, he does singing calls where he integrates the calls into the words of the song very professionally, very nicely.
I don't think they're all Challenge either, because I remember when I was first learning, and all I knew was whether or not I'd heard a call before, or whether I never heard that call before, and I was somewhat hazy on what level things were on, because like I said, my C4 friends were bombarding me all, oh, you learned to right and left through. Well, did you know there's whatever, and but I remember wandering past a group one time. They're in the student union building, and they were doing, and I heard square dancing coming out of there, and so I wandered in. I'm like, oh, there's some more square dancing, and I went in there, and they were doing Winchester tapes, and I walked out of there thinking, spin chain through must be some C4 call or something I hadn't learned yet. I'd never heard it before, and he was, Mosh, wants to spin chain through again, over and over.
Clark did put the Winchester link in the note in the chat if anybody is interested. Clark, am I correct that Stan was not a caller?
Stan was not a caller. He was just a C4 dancer. He initially did this. He made these singing call tapes to help his tape group learn certain calls. And then they got circulated, and people really liked him and encouraged him to do more. People chipped in and bought him a better tape recorder. And when he died, we wanted to preserve him. So I started a preservation project and visited his widow's house twice. She wouldn't let the tapes out of the house, but I brought recording equipment and recorded, his sock drawers worth of tapes.
Where was he from, Clark?
I think North Carolina. You'll hear a Southern twang in his voice. Really nice guy.
Don't see any other hands waving.
I have one other thing to say.
Please.
So the two YouTube videos that Dan's posted twice at the beginning and end, and Chris has recommended, which I also recommend. The one with a call at each level is a repeat of an experiment that Jim Mayo was interested in. The first time round, we've lost the recording of it, but John Sobalski called one sequence at each level in a random order. And Jim's point was, if you watch it with the sound turned off, it all looks like dancing, except for maybe the harder material, the hardest material. And we wanted to reproduce that, so we got Vic to do it. So that's where that one came from. The second one is based on David Millstone, basically saying, who does the Square Dance History Project along with Jim Mayo and others, and basically encouraging everyone, please document your own dance scene as it is now, because people in the future will want to know what that looks like. We can't go back and see very many movies taken of people dancing in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And we'd like to. We'd like to know what dancing was like, what's the Kentucky running sets look like, etc. And we don't have videos of that. And even today, what did challenge dancing look like in the 70s or 80s? We don't really have videos of that. So the video that we referred you to was made as part of an attempt to show this is what C4 dancing was like at a invitational C4 weekend in 2010 or whenever it was taken. And David would encourage any of you, especially with the technology available today, to somehow document your local dance scene so we have it preserved for the future.
David and Jim are doing an amazing job with the what's a history project? Is that what it's called, Clark?
Square Dance History Project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the people in that group also is Tony Parks, who will be speaking with us next week on the Contra and Eastern aspect of that.
I got I hear a dog. I've got a controversial question. So has challenge square dancing hurt square dancing? Should challenge square dancing never have happened, been banned or stopped somehow?
I don't believe so. I believe it enhances square dancing.
I think that the problem is challenge square dancing in conjunction with dancer run clubs. Because challenge square dancing is great, but the dancer run clubs means that the people who are really into it are the challenge dancers. And so we get things like here in the Bay Area, after, I was at the end of my plus season, I was like, well, you should do an advanced class. And the end of 2 years, it was like, well, we're starting a C1 class. And I said no on the C1, but we really, in the Bay Area, we have a rush to challenge because we have all of the clubs are written by or run by challenge dancers. So I think that's kind of one of the reasons why my own efforts are pushed more towards a caller run club, because it keeps that pressure a little bit down. And if you want to go dance challenge somewhere else, that's great. In fact, in my case, if you want to go dance plus somewhere else, that's great.
My question is pretty much along the line of what Dan was just saying. For those of you that call challenge, have you found that the inevitable rush to plus, let's get there as fast as we can, and God be damned with knowing all the formations or the extensions, etc., we'll pick that up at plus. We'll pick up, the recycle from a left-hand wave at plus. Oh, well, we'll do the relay the doozy from a left-hand wave at challenge or at A2 or whatever. Have you found that has affected the challenge dancing?
Well, you can't. You really can't do the challenge dancing without fundamentals like that. But there are people of greater and lesser ability at the challenge levels, and so I mean, you definitely, I think this is used a lot more now at all levels, but a thing that we used to have to do, just to, you would go to a dance and people would be they're all going to square up with their friends from their group, and they're not going to mix around because they're afraid that they're going to get turkeys from from these people they don't know, and that's not as social as it might be, and it also results in these squares always get it, and these squares in the back break down every single sequence all night. But that's pretty bad. Um, and of course, you would like to the people who can't really do it, you'd kind of like them not to come. But in any event, to mix things up, just to mix things up a little bit and even it out a little bit, uh, we did what we called at the time computer numbers. Where you get a little when you walk in the door, you get a little index card, and they're going to announce a number each before each tip starts, and you're going to look at your card and you're going to see what square number it says that you're going to go dancing. So you use these dance cards, pre-printed dance cards, to mix people up, just so they'll mix around. And part of that is the root problem that got invented for is people who can't, probably shouldn't be there, or that's maybe not that harsh, to dance with people who are not just all your friends who you trust.
Yeah, no, I can see that. A lot of that was done at plus level when they had dancers coming up. They did plus, but we took plus workshop over the summer because we just graduated basic, 14 weeks earlier. And it was there to even out the floor, which made a challenge for the callers to make sure that everybody could succeed. I've seen that in a couple of the challenge halls where you've got 4 or 5 squares at the front, but you've got those 3 or 4 squares at the back that are broken down and standing most of the time, ready to join in. And that could be the reason why they get ignored. Well, they don't get ignored, but it seems like they get ignored at the back. If they break down, they break down, and they catch up. There's no balance. The caller goes through their sequence as the sequence is. That said, I've only observed a few challenge dances, and it was almost invariably all either read off a sheet or read off the computer while the caller was calling. So I can't really judge it, but it was an aspect of it. I was just wondering if it was effective the same way as plus has now become the new basic.
There's level creep all the way up.
Yeah.
There's a thing that I've thought about for years, and I'd be interested in Chris's and Clark's and Ed and who else? Well, Scott. I've always, when I was calling C1 and C2 and doing some dancing at weekends and tape groups, I've always felt that there's callers who use challenge calls and there are challenge callers. And I was the first kind. I used challenge calls, but I didn't consider myself a challenge caller. But at least I felt I knew the difference. So that was acceptable to my 2 or 3 squares that I called to regularly. I think I've seen you talk about dancer creep or level creep, seen that in callers also, where you have, competent plus or A1 callers that can't get into a festival or weekend until they know how to call C1. So they learn some C1 calls, but they're really not writing out the concepts and all this other stuff. But again, 2 types of callers that use challenge callers versus callers that call challenge.
Well, and that results in dancers correspondingly. There were at least a couple of groups in the area where I learned who said that they danced C1, and but their caller wasn't really calling challenge level material. He was if you know the C1 calls from only one position, that's like knowing the basic call from only one position. And
that's what you need to be to plus dance these days.
We have the booklets now from Caller Lab on standard formations or standard applications of mainstream and plus and maybe A1, I don't know. But standard applications of challenge is sort of an oxymoron. Challenge means it shouldn't be a standard application. It should be non-standard. Anyway, I saw several heads nodding.
I've been at weekends where people who were dancers from what we derisively behind their backs referred to as instead of C1 we would call it A4, and the but they would show up and to like a hardcore challenge dance and try to come in and dance, and I mean they just couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it at all.
So,
And they
so
they would
Chris,
they would they would break down, constantly and repeat, and generally the caller will offer them their money back, and apologize and everything. But
Chris,
yeah.
Chris, you're talking about A4 dancers, and I was talking about, I guess, A4 callers.
Right. Well, what one breeds the other.
Brian.
So Mel, one of the experiences that I've had over the years that I taught advanced programs or even C1 programs was that I found that as part of teaching that new program was that I had to go back and revisit a lot of calls from the previous programs that they were either taught incorrectly or not taught properly in the first place, or if the call has a different interpretation at the next level. So like for instance, recycle. When you're teaching advanced, you're actually able to break down the components of recycle into the components that are usable at challenge. And so I would teach those at advanced, knowing that when they became challenged answers, they were then able to be able to split them into parts.
Yeah, I know. I'm in full line with you, Brian.
Yep.
I know when I was calling in Germany, when I was in Canada, the same thing. When you teach a class, you teach your standard applications and you teach limited extended applications. When you move on, you carry on with those extended applications. Before you go to plus, you should be able to dance basic and mainstream with all the extended applications before you start learning the next program. Before you go to advanced, you should be able to dance all the extended applications of plus before you go to advanced. And that's the way I taught. I know most of the callers in Canada that I've been exposed to do the same thing. I know in British Columbia and parts of Ontario and Alberta, exactly the same thing. What I have been noticing is the trend over the years is you have your very basic standard applications, which is your basic, and your mainstream, which is now a 12 to 15 week program so that you can start learning plus in a lot of areas. You graduate at plus without the extended applications, and within a year, those plus dancers are now learning advanced and they don't have the foundation. And I'm just wondering how bad that creep is affecting, because getting into advanced, you should be dancing all the extended applications of basic and mainstream, but advanced floors are breaking down on a left-handed recycle with the boys leading as opposed to the girls leading. This is what I've seen happening at advanced and lower. I'm just wondering if that effect has had a significant detriment to challenge, or a lot of people will go up there and because they're bored with basic, mainstream plus, advanced being so vanilla, they try challenge and it's way too hard and there's nothing in the middle for them to dance at. And that could be one of the gaps that we're losing dancers. We've got a good solid challenge level, but we've got that gap between basic to advanced. And then we've got, we've gone as far as we can go. Let's go, as Don says, let's go learn to play bridge.
Well, in the, I guess in our area here anyways, with advanced and challenge, is that the reason why people ended up moving up was either due to boredom or they just felt like they could handle dancing something more. The unfortunate problem is that the reason why they were bored at their lower program was because the local callers in the area tend to water it down, because they're actually calling to the floor of dancers as opposed to calling the level. Yeah. And so when they get up and they're calling what they consider to be an A2 dance, they might be hitting all of the calls on the list, but they're not necessarily using all the extended applications or being what I tend to be, which is crazy with it. So so unfortunately, when they get to challenge, the challenge groups are loving having these people in, because they can't be as choosy as they used to be. back in the good old days when we had, thousands of dancers locally, there were lots that you could sort of handpick and say, okay, I'm going to cherry pick these dancers because these are the best dancers we like. And, we'll invite them to our challenge group and they can come and dance with us. Well, they don't have that capability now. They basically have to take what they get. And unfortunately, the dancers who are coming up aren't necessarily as good as they used to be.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm a very strong advocate of feeling the floor out, calling to the floor, and having as many people dance as possible at all times. It doesn't matter what level it's at. I have seen exactly what you're saying, a lot of it, but the time to bring the floor up is not at a dance, it's at the club level. And that's where we seem to have fallen apart as callers. And that's why it's affected these conventions, as we as callers are calling down to the dancers. We're actually bringing the dancers down in the level to get them up to the program faster, if you know what I mean.
Well, there's a combination of that, or we're just trying to entertain them and keep them dancing. But one of the things I found when teaching your advanced or challenges such, and they're having troubles with the mainstream or plus calls, they don't want you to review those calls. They think they know them. And my first night of teaching A1 typically is I'll teach them chain reaction so they think they're doing something new and exciting. And then I'll teach them the as couples concept. And by teaching them the as couples concept, I can reteach recycle, and I can reteach right and left through. And I can reteach a lot of these calls that are mainstream that they don't know properly and don't know well because they've just sort of sloshed through them. But they're not offended because it's a new concept. And so I found tricky ways to introduce stuff. Ed, you had your hand up.
I'm forgetting what I had. When I was in the Atlanta area, Harold Kelly had a DVD, and that was so good to develop people for advanced and challenge that, he moved you through the whole summer. And if you didn't get through the summer, you wouldn't be there the rest of the year. But he really concentrated on all applications in that DVD. And I think that's what Mel was talking about, that, we need that to have stronger dancers in the advance and the plus, challenge. So I think that's important that they have that chance, because it is watered down at club level for mainstream and plus.
Ed, I just want to throw in a quick off the subject because we're well past the hour, so I can say anything I want. But Harold Kelly is a name I haven't heard in a long, long time. At one point, I was dating a woman whose parents lived in that area, and when I went down to visit, we went to one of Harold Kelly's dances, and word got out that I was the caller, and so he asked me to call a tip, and I'm thumbing through his records, and I found one, and I said, oh, well, here's one. It's a singing call, but I only use the music for patter because I have no idea what the singing call was really about. And I flipped it over, and it was one by Harold Kelly. Try to get less embarrassed for that. So I saw some hands up, Clark, and then Scott.
Yeah, so we brushed up against a really interesting topic, which is, let's pretend you have a convention that has a bunch of halls, each with the different dance programs. And I'm thinking IPAC, the International Plus Advanced and Challenge Convention. They don't have mainstream, but they've got Plus and A1 and A2 and C1 and C2 and C3A and C3B and a part-time C4 hall. They've basically got it all. And what sets the standard of what you can call in the A2 hall? How good were those A2 dancers be or not be? And how did they get that way? Is that how they dance at their home programs? These are dancers from all over the world coming together and dancing in one place. And we have an activity that doesn't set standards, that doesn't have exams, and it's supposed to be, friendship set to music. And yet people can wander into a square and into a hall no matter what their capabilities are. That's just a fascinating thing. I hear callers at certain conventions, especially in the old days, the National Challenge Convention, where they would go, oh, the C3A hall's really weak this year, or something. And in fact, when C3A was invented, or the thing split, C3A was really a bad level with not great dancers for quite a while. It was created because the jump from C2 to C3 was too big, or was perceived to be too big. So just thinking about how the levels get set, what the quality of dancing is at any level, and is it always getting worse or not, and why? That's an interesting thing to think about.
Well, my teaching taught me challenge. If I wanted to learn C1, I taught a C1 class. If I wanted to learn C2, I taught a C2 class. But I would do what I would call a blast concept, meaning that I would teach it very quickly. Those that could keep up with the speed at which I'm teaching would probably keep going. Those that could not keep up with it would probably drop back and not stay with that level. But that's where I'm at with it as far as that's concerned. I'm at fault for some of this because I'm one of those that just jumped ahead and started teaching the level, when I shouldn't have. I don't know.
I'd like to throw a shout out for those advanced and challenged dancers who will go to a mainstream or a plus dance and enjoy it. I had a wonderful experience once. I got to call for the Stanford Quads in California, and it was a plus dance, and we had 10 squares dancing nicely and smoothly, whatever I happened to be calling. And they asked me to call an A1 after tip. And so we had 8 squares dancing the A1 after tip really strongly. And they asked for an A2 tip, and we had 6 squares for that. And we were down to 4 squares for the C1 after tip, and we still had 2 squares dancing for the C2 after tip. It was a long evening, but all those people that were capable of the higher levels were in there having fun, or at least making believe they were. And I think they were basically enjoying the sociability of it and the danceability of it at the plus level all evening long.
I think a lot of that, though, Don, comes down to the fact that you could be calling a basic tip at a C1 hall and give them an entertaining, innovative, and creative experience, where a lot of callers don't have that ability to even do that at a basic level hall. They can call the movements, but they can't create that experience of the dance. And that's, I see that time and time again, that it's all focused on, we've got to get to this level because this is the fun level. And I almost throw up every time I hear dancers say, oh, you got to come and learn plus, you got to come learn A1 because that's the fun level. And I just want to sometimes go to that dancer and say, who's your caller that is not making whatever level you're dancing fun? Because I want to throttle them.
Yeah, one of the things you got to realize, the Stanford Quads was John Sobalski's club. And so it was like you had everything. You had the basic, you had the mainstream, you had the plus, everything was there. John called it, and he called it for the highest level of those dancers.
I'm full aware of what was, the Stanford Quads. It was a function of John left MIT and went out to Stanford area, and one of the MIT dancers, who was also in my challenge groups, went out there also, and she said, gee, we don't have something here like we did back at MIT. And she got together with John, and they created the quads in the image of tech squares as much as possible. So I was comfortable with that group, having known them. But yeah,
what you said about the higher level dancers, one thing that's come up at a lot of dancers association meetings is there's a lot of higher level dancers. And I've heard this from the States, and I've actually heard this in Australia from a couple of dancers as well, is they don't go to attend basic and mainstream because the callers call basic and mainstream, and they can't do it anymore because they only dance plus and advanced. That is unfortunate, but that's not an isolated instance. I know in the Czech Republic, it's very much like what you said, is if there is a basic dance going, it doesn't matter if you're a C4 dancer, you're at the dance because a square dance is a square dance and it's a fun event and it doesn't matter. You got the student jamboree, you may have 100 students in an area in Germany, but you've got 2,000 dancers at the jamboree because it's a fun event. And that's what it is. It's the event and it's the experience of the event. And they make it interesting with even if they've only got 40 movements. I think this goes down to what you were saying earlier about there's callers that call a program and there's callers that are program callers. You know, they call a list, but then there's also callers that are actual callers. And there's not a lot of those callers that call basic through whatever that make every program. It doesn't have to be hard and all position and everything standard, but it's innovative, it's creative. It makes you think and it challenges you successfully that you feel good about that success. You want to come back and you don't feel like you have to rush to the next level because that's the fun level because I'm having fun here.
I think this is a good time to point out, Mel, that it's not that they make the choreography interesting at whatever level they call, but there's a lot more, as we've said many times, to being a good caller, good being entertaining the crowds properly. There's timing, there's body flow, there's enthusiasm, there's showmanship, there's programming. It's not just how you use the calls.
They call beyond the choreographic puzzle.
Yeah, there are a lot of levels of talent and a lot of ingredients that go into it. Ed, you were waving your hand again. Did we wait too long? Did you forget again?
A couple things. One, on the showmanship, I mean, sometimes just catching somebody's eye. You know, if I'm turning around wrong, Steve Cotman just looks at me crazy. It's like, what are you doing? But it's funny with some of the dancers from a higher program come down to dance a lower program. As somebody was saying, I think Mel, I mean, they can't do it anymore, and they struggle. I mean, we've come down with a whole group after dancing in one hall to dance in another hall, and they square up together. And some of that is a little bit probably for self-assurance, because it seems like we have a harder time dancing the lower program sometimes as a whole group, but sometimes we have more fun messing up.
Do you think maybe that's because you tune out because it's not as difficult?
I really don't know what it is. I think some of the things, I mean, your brain has been working hard and sometimes you're relaxing at a lower level, but I mean, they may not be that strong a dancer at the program they're trying to dance. Sometimes
There are two things there that I want to bring up. One is it has to do with the caller. If the caller is entertaining, it doesn't matter what he does as long as he's entertaining those dancers. The second thing is you could go into an area and the dancers just plain can't do the calls. So you tend to eliminate some of those calls, like in Southern California. In Southern California, I tend to not call peel the top or peel off because the dancers can't do it. So I end up doing an entertainment type of thing where I pull out a cane or a top hat, or I do a lot of singing calls because I can do that. So I have two things to fall back on. Number one, my ability to do advanced and challenge, because that's what I did in Northern California. In Southern California, I tend to be an entertainer. I tend to sing a lot. I tend to bring out toys and canes and stuff like that and sing.
Boy, Clark, go ahead.
Echoing a little bit on what Mel put in the chat. I want to say that I think as a dancer, you basically get one shot at enjoying each level. So you learn mainstream, that's a lot of fun. You shouldn't leave doing that until you kind of feel like, okay, I've had enough of this, what else is there? And then you get exposed to plus, and oh wow, there's all these Relay the Deuces and so forth, and that's a lot of fun. Advanced gives you something else, and so forth, all the way up through C4. But once you've been exposed to A2, at least for me, it was a lot harder to go back and dance plus and get the same joy out of dancing plus as I had when I was first exposed to it. So if you had a choice in life between going from nothing through C4 in a year, which a few people have done, or going from nothing through C4 over 5 or 10 years, I think you're going to get more enjoyment out of your square dance experience going a bit slower and enjoying all the levels. On the other hand, if you take 30 years to get from mainstream through C4, you may not end up being a very good C4 dancer. I mean, some of the people who have done it quickly have become exceptional dancers. On the other hand, however many hands that is, for the good of the activity and longevity, we know lots of C4 dancers who have been with it for 30, 40 years now. They tend to do it, learn it, and stick with it. And we're always seeing them at the various weekends and festivals and so forth. So sometimes once they've learned all that stuff, they just stick with it kind of forever. But don't advance up, and maybe that's true as a caller also, I don't know. But don't advance up through the levels faster, you know, or let people push you through them faster than you think you should be going through them.
Interestingly, we talked earlier about when you're bored with A2 or feel you've danced it enough and want something new, challenge is there to go to rather than bridge and staying in square dancing. There are people like Clark who got to that point with C4 and needed something else. And rather than looking for C5, he found contra dancing and traditional dancing. So if you want to know what kept Clark in this activity, join us next week when Tony Parks is going to talk to us. Go ahead, Clark.
I'll also say one other thing, and this has saved a few people, is instead of moving up, learn hexagons.
Do you want to give a talk on that sometime?
I'd be happy to.
Because John, am I correct that that was your kind of thing? You invented that or created it? Or?
Somewhat. You'll have to go to the talk to learn the full history.
Oh, somebody was saying you and Bill Eiler.
Yeah, those are the two names that are associated with it.
Okay.
I learned hex through Clark, actually at a nationals. It first started at Color Lab, but then at the nationals, I got my hex under my belt.
John was saying earlier that we should have Andy Alamando or
Andy Alameo.
Andy Alameo, and he's okay, he's good, but I think Clark would be better to describe it.
Clark, should I try to get Bill Eiler to join you? Because I haven't talked to him in a while.
Up to you. I will say that Bill does a style of hexagons that probably isn't what has been generally adopted since he started doing that and I started my thing. And I bet that the hexagons as I describe them are what most everyone's doing when you think of hexagons. The difference between having me do the talk and either Andy or there's a guy on the East Coast in North or South Carolina who comes to Color Lab who has a whole club that's just a hexagon only club. And I'll think of his name in a minute. Is I know how to do it. and I know how to present it. And I've done that at several venues, but I only use it in kind of a show them for the first time. Isn't this amazing? Aren't you like, isn't this a different feel, etc. For the duration of a tip or two, without a lot of actual just dancing it forever. Whereas these other guys like Andy and, oh, it's Chris somebody. All I'm coming up with is Chris Shipper, but that's not quite right. Those two have put clubs and know how to present it to average people with multiple squares doing it and wanting to do it more and more. So that's the difference between what I would be able to do as a talk versus them saying, here's how to do it with average dancers and what the reaction is and what you do.
Well, what I'd like in a talk is just like we did with Chris here is let people who are unfamiliar with them get a feel for what it is and whom it's for, but not try and talk people into it or give them details on how to do it. Although probably details on how to do it is what's necessary.
Right. Well, so the neat thing is, if we had people live in squares or in hexagons at Mainstream or Plus, there's nothing like experiencing it, especially as a caller, where you have all your caller knowledge and caller skills, but yet this is going to take everything you know and give you this weird twist on it that you're going to be completely lost for a bit and then start getting it and seeing it. And it's having those aha moments over and over again in the course of a 10 or 15 or 20 minute, dance presentation that is just mind blowing. But we can't do that over Zoom. So yes, I can talk about it, but you aren't going to have those aha moments, which is unfortunate.
Are there some videos on YouTube that would help show a little of it?
Oh, I can certainly show it, and Taminations is going to be our friend here. But
Taminations doesn't have hexes yet, does it?
Taminations will do hexagon one call at a time, but won't do hexagon sequencer, to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, well, that's good enough. So
yeah, and that's good enough just to give people some ideas. So
yeah,
but I'm happy to do it, and I bet I can keep it in your 15 to 20 minutes to get started and then let people chat.
Can we talk about it privately for sometime in January?
Whatever, assuming COVID's not over by then.
Actually, I have a question about it.
Maybe I'll actually keep it in the time frame, unlike Chris minutes, which seem to be
Is
about.
there a COVID concept I'm not aware of?
It's called Two Couples Phantom
forever.
Dancing, Scott. I have a question about it. I've danced it a little. I wasn't all that excited about it, but apparently a lot of people are. But do callers sight call it, or is it a great place for mental image?
No, it's better than both of those, because the way I do it when I sight call it in Resolve is you don't have to get every head man with every original head lady. As long as every head man gets a head lady, that counts, and no one's ever out of sequence. So resolving is basically trivial. And I've gotten callers up on the stage for workshop sessions. This would be at the Tech Squares weekend, where I do the hexagon teach for 20 minutes, and then I get them to do some calling, even though they've never done it before. But just having them as a competent caller, competent plus caller on the stage, watching what I'm doing, they try doing some stuff, and they can start to see what the formation, these are columns, these are waves, these are diamonds, etc. And these are what you can do. And using their normal calling knowledge, plus what they've just learned by watching, they're comfortable enough to start doing it and having their own aha moments.
Guys, I think I'm going to bow out of this for now. I've been having fun. Hope you guys have. Thanks again, Chris and Dan, and the others of you that have. Some people like Clark who don't show up very often. Guido, I don't think has shown up before at all. Thank you for joining us. I'm glad it's worked out. And Ed, I don't know if you've joined us before. I definitely know that Scott and Mel have been here frequently, and as well as Dan and Chris.
Don, just before you go, I'd love to say I would love to see what Clark would present, very similar to what you did when you came across to do mental image. I think it's important that we get an outline of what it is in concept and what it is in basic. Clark, I posted your just the link to the presentation you gave in 2002 on hex squares, but as far as that goes, I think it is something that is definitely worth. It's still a novelty. It's a a novelty activity or a game in many areas to do a one of or a fun night around hex squares. But I think it would be a great thing to do. Just this is what it's about. A very simple introduction to, similar to what you did here with challenge. I think it'd be a great idea.
That sounds good.
I think so too. I think Clark would do a wonderful job. He taught me, so.
Anyway, I'm going to bow out, guys. See you sometime. Bye.
Thanks, Don.
Bye.
Clark, I'd like to learn more about intertwining squares. That was a lot of fun. Thanks,
Oh, you mean hashtag? Oh, Clark talk about that.
Yeah, well, or there's COVID squares where everything is done concentric. With phantoms, a phantom concentric square through heads.
So
In two couple only.
Dan, you should remember that. I mean, there's hashtag squares, and people might have an interest in that. And then there's also the hexagon thing. I don't know if we should combine those two on the same day as just some sort of novelty squares, but given that we don't have a live group of dancers up in front of us and we're just talking about it in the abstract, it might be worth putting both of those together if I do a talk in January.
I will let you lead that talk lead how you think that content should go together.
Cam and or Colorama or whatnot, did they do, are they set up for the choreography of hexagon squares?
I don't remember.
Because I know for new callers, that's one of the things that really, if you've got the program, rather than a stop at something with an active program, or the live checkers like Matthew Mills did, where you could actually see moving the checkers, that had a lot more impact on seeing how they actually worked, if you could visualize it rather than just set diagrams. You're muted, Clark.
I'll have to do some research and see. It's great. The button says mute, which I'm looking at going, oh, it must mean I'm muted. I better click it, but no. So while I might be able to get a program that does hexagon and lets us see the motion other than just one call at a time like Taminations, I don't think hashtag anyone has anything that does that. Yeah. Okay. Ideas for January.
Yeah.
If I recommend definitely making those two different talks.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's enough in each one of them, and to for a whole thing.
I agree.
When you do hexagons, you're going to get a lot of crossover with people thinking that rectangles are the same as hexagons.
Right. I mean, the general, if we take a step backwards from all that, is what can you do that takes the dancer's knowledge of calls without teaching them more calls, but letting them use them in ways they've never thought of before? So we aren't teaching them more. And by the way, accidentally, it makes them better at the calls. And even as a caller, I now know how to teach certain calls better because of having to teach them in hexagon. So, yeah, okay. So keep them separate because they're all under the same umbrella, but don't do them all at once.
Yes.
I have to go because it's my sister's birthday today. It's 9:30 in Penticton, BC, so I'm going to give her a call.
Well, tell her happy birthday.
I will do.
I promised Charlene a day in the shop, so I'm going to similarly bow out and go make sawdust.
Well,